The stars above were cold and distant. A prison ship moved through space, silent like a ghost. Inside, creatures from many worlds sat chained, beaten, and scared. Some were tall with glowing eyes. Others had scales, fur, or even metal skin. But one prisoner stood out. He was short, soft-looking, and had no claws or armor. He was a human. His name was Mason Carter, an engineer from Earth. Mason sat in his small cell, hands chained back against the wall. His brown eyes watched every movement of the guards. Tall, lizard-like aliens called the Drellcath. Their black armor gleamed under the cold ship lights. Their yellow eyes never blinked. One Drellcath snarled at Mason through the bars. "Enjoy your last day, human. The Labyrinth eats cowards like you." Mason didn't answer. He stayed quiet. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't strong. But he was clever, and clever was his only weapon now. Hours later, the ship landed with a heavy thud on a rocky, dead planet. The prisoners were dragged out into a wide field. The sky above was dark purple, and giant metal walls surrounded a massive building shaped like a twisted cube. The Death Labyrinth. The Drellcath commander stepped forward and raised his voice. "You stand before the ancient trial, the maze of death and pain. Only the cleverest survive. The rest, feed the floor." The ground shook slightly. Deep below, something roared. Mason glanced around. Beside him stood a huge alien covered in thick red armor. Its name was Rorgath. Its hands were like hammers. On Mason's other side was a spider-like alien with 8 eyes and a nervous twitch. None of them looked friendly. They were pushed forward through the giant gates of the labyrinth. Once inside, the doors slammed shut behind them with a heavy boom. It was dark. Then lights flickered on from above, green, red, and white. The floor beneath their feet was made of moving tiles. Some hissed with steam, others had dark stains. A loud voice echoed through the walls. "Begin!" As soon as the trial began, chaos followed. A giant blade swung from the ceiling. One alien screamed and fell in two. Acid sprayed from hidden vents. A beast burst through a door and crushed a small furry creature in seconds. Mason dived low, rolled, under a blade, and ducked behind a pillar. His heart pounded. "This isn't just a maze," he whispered. "It's a meat grinder." He watched the others. Some tried to fight the traps. Others ran in random directions. Most didn't last 5 minutes, but Mason didn't move yet. He waited. He listened. He saw a pattern in the floor tiles. Every 3 seconds, the red ones lit up, and the tiles near them shifted. He timed it, 1, 2, 3, then ran across them when they were safe. Ahead of him, a group of aliens was stuck at a metal door with no handle. They pushed and roared. Mason walked up calmly. "Step back," he said. They laughed. "Human wants to open the maze door?" Mason took a small piece of metal he'd hidden in his boot. It was part of his old prison bed. He pressed it between the side panels, using a basic Earth trick, short-circuiting the control wires. Click. The door opened. The aliens stared in shock. Mason just walked through without a word. The maze twisted and turned. There were no maps, no signs, just endless tunnels, traps, and puzzles. Mason avoided a gas trap by using cloth to cover his mouth and crawl low. He used a shiny plate to reflect. Laser beams from wall turrets. He broke a spinning fan trap by jamming it with a broken pipe. At one point, he heard crying. He found a small, frog-like alien stuck under debris. It had big eyes and shaky limbs. Mason hesitated, then pulled the metal off and helped the creature up. My name is Tuk Tuk," the alien said in a shaky voice. "I'm Mason," he replied. "Stay close if you want to live." Tuk Tuk nodded quickly. From then on, the little alien followed Mason like a shadow. Further inside, things got worse. The group entered a chamber full of shifting mirrors. The lights bent. Sound echoed strangely. Rorgath, the red-armored giant, growled. "It's a trick zone. One of the aliens ran forward and disappeared, screaming. Another hit a mirror and shattered into blood. Mason picked up a stone and threw. It vanished, mid-air. "Hidden trap," he said. "The mirrors hide the death zones." He noticed that the mirrors were all placed at odd angles, reflecting the same hallway over and over. It was a loop. "Wait," Mason whispered. "It's not real. That hallway's a fake. Look. Our reflections aren't matching our movements." Tuk-Tuk's eyes widened. "How do we get out?" Mason thought fast. He tied a piece of cloth around a stick, then used it like a pole, tapping ahead. One mirror shimmered differently. It was made of fake glass. He stepped through it. The others gasped, then followed. Only 5 survived that room. They reached a resting point. A quiet chamber with water and strange fruit. The group sat, tired and bleeding. Rorgath walked up to Mason. "You don't fight," the big alien growled. "But you live. Why?" Mason looked up calmly. "I don't need to fight. I use my brain. That's what humans do." Rorgath stared, then walked away silently. Tuk-Tuk whispered, "They're starting to respect you." Mason shrugged. "They don't have to like me. Just follow my lead." Suddenly the room shook. The walls split open and the floor dropped. The group fell into a new section of the labyrinth, a deep tunnel with glowing blue stones. The light was dim and strange whispers filled the air. This was the next level. Mason stood, bruised but steady. Tuk-Tuk held his arm. "What now?" the small alien asked. Mason stared ahead. "We think harder, move smarter, and never stop watching." He turned to the others. "From now on, we don't rush. We test every step. This isn't about strength. It's about who's the cleverest." No one argued. Even Rorgath stayed quiet. They walked deeper into the maze. Some of them would die. But Mason? He was planning to be the first human to escape the death labyrinth. And he wasn't done using clever Earth tricks yet. The air in the new section of the labyrinth was heavy and hot. Glowing blue stones lit the long tunnel, casting strange shadows on the walls. Every sound echoed. Footsteps, breathing, even the soft drip of water from the ceiling. Mason Carter walked carefully, one hand against the wall, the other holding a broken metal pipe. Behind him followed Tuk-Tuk, the small frog-like alien, and 3 others, Rorgath, the red-armored brute, Silari, the tall, thin insectoid, and a quiet, shadow-like being they just called Whisper. The rest were already dead. Mason stopped and looked. At the floor, a faint mist rolled across the ground. "Don't step forward," he said. Rorgath snorted. "What now, human?" "See the mist?" Mason pointed. "It's staying low. That means the floor ahead is colder. Too cold. Could be a trap." Silari buzzed nervously. "How do you know that?" "Earth science," Mason said. "Cold. Floors often mean either pressure plates or hidden coolant systems. Both mean danger." He threw a piece of broken mirror onto the floor ahead. Snap! The tile dropped. A burst of metal spikes shot up, spearing the mirror shard mid-air. Tuk-Tuk jumped back. "That would have been me!" Mason smiled. "Not anymore." They moved through, the tunnel carefully testing each step. After the spike trap, they found a wall puzzle, a set of shifting blocks with strange alien symbols. Rorgath growled. "Break it!" Mason shook his head. "Touch the wrong one, and the floor will open. You'll fall into fire or worse." He studied the symbols. "It's a language pattern. I've seen something like this before. On Earth, we call it a cipher. Some of the letters repeat. See here?" He arranged the symbols using logic, finding the repeating pieces and matching them. The wall clicked. A door opened slowly. Behind it was a dark chamber filled with metal statues, tall warriors holding swords and axes. They looked dead, but Mason didn't trust them. "We move fast. Don't touch anything." They stepped in quietly. Halfway through the chamber, Whisper touched a sword on the wall. Clang! The statues came alive. Blades swung. Solari screamed as one statue cut her in half. Tuk-Tuk ducked under a swinging axe. Mason grabbed Whisper and shoved him forward. "Move!" Rorgath roared and smashed one statue with his fist, but more took its place. Mason spotted a panel high on the wall. "There! That's the control node!" He climbed fast, using the statues' bodies as steps. A blade sliced his leg, but he kept moving. At the top, he saw 3 colored wires. "Classic Earth problem," he muttered. "Red, green, or blue? Which one shuts it down?" He closed his eyes and took a breath. "Red usually means power. Let's try green." He yanked the green wire. Whir. Click. The statues froze in place. Rorgath looked up, breathing heavily. "You saved us." Mason nodded, bleeding but alive. "Next time, don't touch anything shiny." They rested in a corner of the chamber. Tuk-Tuk cleaned Mason's wound with cloth torn from his own clothes. "Why are you helping us?" Tuk-Tuk asked softly. Mason looked at the little alien. "Because I was the weakest one here. I didn't have claws or armor. But now you all listen. Because I think..." Tuk-Tuk blinked. "Is that what humans do?" "On Earth," Mason said, "we survive by solving problems. We can't outrun tigers. We don't have wings, but we learn. We build. We adapt." He stood slowly. "And I'm going to adapt my way right out of this nightmare." The next zone of the labyrinth was worse. The walls turned from metal to flesh. Everything pulsed. The floor was soft and warm, and the air smelled rotten. Rorgath gagged. "This place is alive." The hallway led into a large chamber where the walls breathed like lungs. Mason stared. "This must be the biozone. The maze has a living core." In the center of the chamber was a beating heart, big as a truck, surrounded by cables and slime. The floor was covered in alien goo. Tuk-Tuk slipped and almost fell. "It's like walking on jelly." As they moved forward, the heart suddenly pulsed faster. Tentacles shot out from the floor. "Run!" Mason shouted. Whisper was caught first, wrapped and pulled into the wall. His scream echoed, then vanished. Rorgath tore one tentacle apart, but another grabbed his leg. Mason noticed a pattern. The heart blinked every 5 seconds. During that blink, the tentacles paused. "Time your steps," Mason yelled. "Move on the blink." They ran, 1 blink, 3 steps forward. Second blink, jump over the goo. Third blink, roll left. They made it past the tentacle zone and escaped through a side tunnel just before the heart exploded in anger. Now only 3 remained, Mason, Rorgath, and Tuk-Tuk. They found a quiet spot to rest. Rorgath sat against the wall, breathing heavily. "You're different, human. I thought you were weak." Mason laughed tiredly. "I am weak. But I've read books about things like this. Earth has stories about deadly mazes. We call them dungeons. And in every story, it's the thinker who survives." Tuk-Tuk asked, "So what's next?" Mason looked ahead. "We're getting closer to the center. I can feel it. The traps are smarter now. Less brute force, more mind games." They entered the next chamber. It was bright and quiet. The walls were covered in screens showing the survivors. Mason, Tuk-Tuk, and Rorgath could see themselves walking. Then the screens changed. Now they showed memories. Mason's home on Earth, his little sister, his old dog. Tuk-Tuk's village, his mother's face, Rorgath's first battle. Then the floor vanished. The 3 fell into a spinning room with mirrors all around. Suddenly, they were separated. Mason was alone. A voice spoke in his ear. "This is the room of illusions. 1 lie will kill you. 1 truth will set you free." 3 doors appeared. Each had a word. Hope. Fear, logic. Mason took a deep breath. "Earth rule," he whispered. "Always choose the path that makes the most sense." He looked at the doors again. Hope leads to dreams. Fear leads to panic. But logic, Logic solves puzzles. He stepped through the logic door. He found himself back in the real maze. Tuk-Tuk and Rorgath were there too. Both had chosen the same door. You made it! Tuk-Tuk shouted and hugged Mason. Rorgath smiled, rare for him. We chose the same path. Mason smiled back. Then we think alike. They heard a sound ahead, a low hum. The lights flickered. The air grew cold. Mason stepped forward. We're almost at the heart of the labyrinth, he said. The place no one's ever reached. Rorgath cracked his knuckles. Let's make history. Tuk-Tuk nodded. Together, as the three of them walked into the unknown, the Death Labyrinth watched. So did the entire galaxy. Hidden far above, in a control room orbiting the planet, hundreds of alien elites sat and stared at screens. They had been watching the maze for years, using it as entertainment. Now, for the first time, a human was close to winning. One Drelkath leader leaned forward and whispered, "This shouldn't be possible." Another muttered, "Humans. They're not what we thought." Below, Mason Carter gripped his broken metal pipe and smiled. "I may not be strong," he whispered, "but Earth taught me how to survive anything." Mason Carter stepped into the next chamber with Tuk-Tuk and Rorgath beside him. The air had changed again. It was still and cold, almost like the room was holding its breath. A soft, humming sound echoed off the smooth metal walls, like a machine was thinking. This was no ordinary trap zone. This was the maze of the mind. Rorgath looked around, his red armored skin twitching. Where are the blades, the poison gas, the beasts? Mason narrowed his eyes. This place isn't built to kill your body. It's meant to break your mind. Suddenly the walls shimmered. New images replaced the blank metal. They turned into windows. Through each one, a memory played. Mason saw Earth, his little sister playing with their dog in their backyard. He took a step closer, feeling warmth rise in his chest. Tuk-Tuk gasped. "That's my pond. My mother is there." Even Rorgath's voice softened. "That's my first command, my soldiers, my victory." Mason's heart beat faster. "Don't believe it. It's a trick." But it was too late. Tuk-Tuk reached out to touch the memory window. The floor beneath him opened. He screamed as he fell into darkness. "Tuk-Tuk!" Mason shouted, running toward the spot, but the floor had sealed again. "No!" Mason slammed his fist on the ground. "I should have stopped him," Rorgath growled. "He was weak. The maze knew it." Mason stood slowly, eyes full of fire. "No, the maze is clever. It uses emotions like traps. And it almost got me too." The walls changed again. This time, there were 3 doors. Each one was plain but had a single word on it. Regret, anger. Reason. Mason sighed. Another mind game. Rorgath didn't wait. "I choose anger." He walked through the door and disappeared. Mason stood alone now. His mind was racing. Regret pulls you backward. Anger clouds your sight. But reason... He stepped through the reason door. He appeared in a round room with no walls, just blackness. In the center floated a puzzle cube, spinning slowly. A voice filled the air, low and calm. To escape, complete the sequence, fail and be lost forever. Numbers began to appear on the sides of the cube. 1, 2, 3, 5, 8. Mason smiled. "Fibonacci, Earth math." He spoke out loud. 13. The cube glowed. A door opened in the dark. "Try harder next time," the voice said, almost disappointed. Mason passed through the door. Now he stood in another room, this one filled with mirrors. His own reflection stared back at him 100 times. Then each reflection moved on its own. Some smiled, some frowned. One raised a knife. "One of these is real," the voice said. "Choose wrong and die." Mason stepped forward. He watched carefully. Each mirror showed him, but only one version blinked at the same time he did. There. He touched the correct mirror. The others shattered. He walked forward and entered a quiet hallway. At the end, he saw Rorgath, sitting on the floor, his head hanging. Mason rushed over. "You okay?" Rorgath looked up slowly. "I saw my clan, my father. He said I failed him." Mason put a hand on his shoulder. "The maze used your pain against you. It's not real. You're not a failure. You're a survivor." Rorgath grunted. "You're smarter than you look, human." Mason grinned. "You're not the first to say that." Together, they moved deeper into the labyrinth. Every hallway now required thinking. Puzzles, riddles, pattern tests. There were no more monsters or traps, only mind games. They reached a large circular room with glowing tiles on the floor. A message appeared on the wall. "Step only on truth. One lie will burn." Rorgath looked confused. "What does that mean?" Words began to appear on the tiles. 2 + 2, hunger 4. The sun is cold. Water is dry. Fire is hot. Humans cannot think. Rorgath is dumb. Maze cannot be beaten. Logic brings victory. Mason. Read quickly. Only step on statements that are true. He stepped on. 2 + 2 + 4. Fire is hot. Logic brings victory. The path lit up beneath his feet. He turned back. Follow the same ones. Rorgath stepped forward. When he reached, "Rorgath is dumb." He paused. Mason said quickly, "That's a trap. Don't step there." Rorgath growled but listened. He followed safely. When they reached the other side, a new door opened. They entered the next chamber, a wide, open area with a single glowing orb floating in the center. The walls were lined with strange alien tech. Mason walked forward. This must be the maze's core AI. The brain. The orb pulsed as a deep voice spoke. "You are different, human. You think. You adapt. You are close to escape." Rorgath stepped forward. "Then let us go," the voice replied. "First, a final test, a paradox." The floor lit up with words. "If this sentence is false, then it is true. But if it is true, then it must be false." Mason blinked. "A logical paradox," the voice continued. "Solve it, or stay here forever." Mason sat down. He'd heard something like this before in old Earth logic classes. It was called the liar's paradox. He smiled. "You want the answer?" he asked. He stood up and faced the orb. "There is no answer." Silence. "This paradox loops forever. It's unsolvable. Trying to solve it crashes logic systems. That's the trick." The orb pulsed. Correct. The room shook. A wall slid open. A bright light shined through. "You may pass." Mason turned to Rorgath. "Let's go. We're almost out." As they walked forward, Mason whispered, "Earth taught me that sometimes the only way to win is to know when a question is impossible." Rorgath chuckled. "Maybe humans aren't so soft after all." Suddenly a blast rocked the tunnel ahead. Smoke filled the air. Red lights flashed. A shape appeared in the smoke. It was Tuk Tuk. Burned, limping, but alive. "Tuk Tuk!" Mason shouted and ran to him. The little alien collapsed into Mason's arms. "I escaped the memory hole, found another way. It hurt, but I'm still here." Mason grinned. "You're tougher than you look." Tuk Tuk gave a weak smile. "I learned from the best." Rorgath helped carry Tuk Tuk. Now the three of them were together again, and the final gate stood ahead. Above, in the alien control station, the Drellcath leaders stared at the screens. They reached the final zone. "A human did this? He's rewriting our rules." They didn't know what to do. For thousands of years, no one had escaped the death labyrinth. But now, a human, a weak Earth creature, was making it look possible. And worse, he wasn't using strength. He was using Earth tricks. Back in the maze, Mason placed his hand on the final scanner. The wall trembled. A giant door, shaped like an eye, began to open. Beyond it lay the last chamber, the heart of the labyrinth, where the true secret waited, and where escape would either be won or lost forever. Mason looked at his two companions. "You ready?" Rorgath cracked his knuckles. "Always." Tuk-Tuk nodded, shaking but brave. "Let's finish this." Mason smiled. "Then let's beat the labyrinth." Together, they stepped into the light. The final gate opened with a loud rumble. Dust and smoke poured out as the massive door split in half, revealing the heart of the labyrinth. Mason Carter stepped forward first, holding Tuk-Tuk steady with one arm while gripping a broken metal pipe in the other. Rorgath followed behind, alert and silent. They had survived deadly traps, mind puzzles, and cruel illusions. Now, only one challenge remained. The chamber was enormous. The walls stretched high like a cathedral. The floor was black glass, reflecting their every move. At the center stood a strange machine, a giant sphere floating and spinning slowly, covered in glowing symbols and wires that pulsed like veins. It looked alive. Tuk-Tuk whispered, "What is that?" Mason narrowed his eyes. "It's the brain, the real brain of the labyrinth." A voice echoed all around them, deep, ancient, and emotionless. "You have reached the heart. You are the first in 5,000 cycles to make it here." Rorgath growled, "Then open the way! Let us go!" The voice replied, "Escape is not given, it must be earned. One final test, one final trick." Suddenly, the glass floor cracked and shifted. The group fell through a black hole and landed in separate small rooms, each one shaped like a cube. Mason's room. His cube was empty, except for a metal table. On the table sat a device with a screen and two buttons, red and blue. Words appeared. On the screen, press red. You escape and the others die. Press blue. You all stay, but survive together. Do nothing. You all die in 1 minute. Mason's breath caught. No, it's a prisoner's dilemma. He remembered this from Earth, a game theory test, a cruel one. He looked around. They're testing loyalty, trust. They want me to act selfish. He stared at the buttons. The timer on the screen began to count down. 59, 58. Mason closed his eyes. He pictured Tuk-Tuk's hopeful eyes, Rorgath's brave silence. He reached out, Tuk-Tuk's room. The small alien sat in a cube full of flashing lights. On the wall was a simple sentence. Tell the truth, and your friends suffer. Lie, and you suffer. Stay silent, and all suffer. Tuk-Tuk shivered. He was scared. His body still ached from the memory trap, but he remembered how Mason had carried him, how Rorgath had protected him. He looked at the wall. Then he opened his mouth. Rorgath's room. Rorgath's chamber was different. There were no buttons, no words, just a large mirror. In the mirror, he saw himself, but smaller, weaker, his younger self. The younger version spoke. You are nothing without your strength. The human leads now. Why follow the weak? Rorgath growled. The human is not weak. He's smart. He thinks ahead. He saved us. The mirror flickered. Then prove it. Bow before the image of weakness, or be erased. Rorgath stepped forward and knelt. I do not bow to weakness, he said. I bow to wisdom. Suddenly, all three were pulled out of their test chambers. By beams of white light, they landed back in the main room, blinking in shock. The floating orb now glowed brightly. Its voice echoed again. You passed, all of you. Unity, sacrifice, humility. Mason helped Tuk-Tuk stand. Rorgath smiled slightly. You didn't press the red button, did you? Tuk-Tuk asked. Mason shook his head. Never. The orb spun faster. Then it stopped. The final door will open. But one more truth must be revealed. The chamber floor lowered slowly, revealing a staircase made of light. Mason looked at the others. Let's see what they're hiding. They walked down into a glowing hall. The walls were covered with screens. On each screen, alien creatures watched, cheering, shouting, eating, laughing. Tuk-Tuk blinked. That's an audience. Rorgath's eyes widened. This is a show. Mason felt his stomach twist. We weren't prisoners. We were performers. Entertainment. A larger screen showed Mason's face, zoomed in as he solved the puzzles. Another showed Tuk-Tuk screaming in the memory trap. Another showed Rorgath bowing in his final test. Millions of alien voices echoed from the screens. The human! He's too clever! Unfair advantage! Some cheered, some were angry, but all were watching. They reached a control room filled with alien tech. A group of silver droids stood by the control panels. One turned and spoke. You have broken the cycle. No one has reached this point in thousands of years. Mason stepped forward. Then let us go. This game is over. The droid hesitated. There are consequences. You've exposed the Labyrinth's secrets. If you leave, others will know the truth. Rorgath growled. We don't care. Mason asked calmly. What happens if we destroy this place instead? The droid tilted its head. The galaxy will panic. The Drelkath Empire will fall. You will start a war. Mason looked at the control panels, then back at his friends. Tuk-Tuk whispered, We can't let them trap others like us. Rorgath nodded. Burn it. Mason used his knowledge of alien circuits. He studied the control panel and pulled out key wires. Earth trick, he muttered. Loop the command system. Start a power overload. He linked two wires together. The lights flickered. The orb above cracked. Sparks flew. A voice screamed from the walls. System error. Labyrinth core failure. Evacuation required. Alarms began to ring. Mason looked at the two droids left standing. Open the escape hatch. They obeyed. A door slid open behind the room. A tunnel led to a landing pad outside the labyrinth. A small alien ship waited there. Mason, Tuk-Tuk, and Rorgath ran toward it as the walls shook and fire burst from the ceilings. The death labyrinth was dying. They reached the ship, climbed inside, and strapped in. Tuk-Tuk asked, You sure you can fly this? Mason grinned. I'm from Earth. I've played enough video games. He pulled the lever. The ship lifted off, just as the labyrinth exploded behind them. From space, the burning maze looked like a dead star collapsing. On board the escape ship, Mason finally sat back. Rorgath crossed his arms. You saved us. You ended the game. Tuk-Tuk smiled wide. You're a hero. Mason shook his head. No, I'm just human. And sometimes being clever is enough. Far above, in the alien capital, the Drelkath High Council watched the explosion. 1. Commander growled. The human escaped. The galaxy saw it. Another said, now every species will fear them. And one old alien whispered, not fear, respect. The small ship soared through space, away from the burning ruins of the death labyrinth. Inside, Mason Carter leaned back in his seat, tired but alive. Beside him, Tuk-Tuk rubbed his sore arm, still amazed they had escaped. Rorgath sat quietly, his usual fierce look softened by relief. For a moment, silence filled the cockpit. The stars stretched out endlessly ahead. Mason broke the quiet. We made it. We're free. Tuk-Tuk smiled weakly. I never thought I would see the sky again. Rorgath nodded. And yet they will remember us. Mason looked out the window. Not just us. The whole galaxy. News of their escape spread fast. Ships from different planets carried the story of the human who survived the impossible. The Death Labyrinth was known as a place where no one ever escaped. Now, one human had broken the myth. Alien leaders whispered in their halls. Soldiers trained harder. Spies watched Earth more closely. The Drelkath High Council was angry. Their pride was shattered. The arena that entertained millions was ruined. But fear grew too. If a human could survive their greatest test, what else could humans do? On Earth, Mason landed quietly. The planet was peaceful, green, and full of life. The news did not reach many. The governments kept his story secret, fearing panic or war. Mason did not want fame. He just wanted peace. But some things had changed. His fellow humans looked at him differently. The galaxy looked at humans differently. He had shown that humans were clever, quick, adaptive, and that was dangerous. Back in the stars, alien broadcasts played Mason's journey again and again. Across countless worlds, millions watched the humans solve puzzles, survive traps, and outsmart enemies. Children on distant planets learned his tricks. Scientists studied how he thought. Warriors feared the quiet human who did not fight with claws or guns, but with brains. In a secret place, Mason met with Tuk-Tuk and Rorgath one last time. "We changed the game," Mason said. Tuk-Tuk smiled. "You taught me to think, to fight smart." Rorgath grunted. "And you earned our respect." Mason looked up. "We have to be ready. They will come for us. The galaxy will want to test humans again." Tuk-Tuk nodded. "Then we will be ready." Months later, Mason stood on Earth's tallest mountain. The stars were clear and bright. He spoke softly to the sky. "Old Earth rule. If you can't win by strength, outsmart your enemy." He smiled. Because now the galaxy knew. Humans were not just weak creatures. They were survivors. They were winners.